What up,
Back to the
and
Hype
welcome.
Mind. Hey, nice to
Yes.
see you. I'm Bear, and I'm
I'm
here with
Daniel.
Daniel.
We keep talking over each other, but that's
Yes,
great.
indeed. And today we're talking about marriage and why it's important. And and I got my notes with me this morning because at this hour I'm like I'm just rolling through the motions. It's too early, but yeah, we're talking about why marriage is important. And I don't think there's any better place to start than to first define marriage, because part of the reason that you find that it has no value is it's been redefined. It's not really what it used to be, and it's not what it means to be married. It doesn't hold the same weight as what it used to mean. It has definitely been altered in many ways, arguably deliberately. Um, so,
Indeed.
I think most people define marriage as a basically a covenant between two people, a promise between two people. Um, in the traditional sense, it's seen as a monogamous, exclusive promise to remain that way and to be each other's lifeline in a sense, and um, support system through thick and thin. Would you word that
Right,
any?
right. Well, uh, you mean that's what it used to be?
Well, and technically still is. I mean, the redefinition of it really isn't. It's an altered understanding of what it is and what it should
Hmm.
be.
Yeah, I mean that's true. But now most people have a different view on it, or most people have a different intention going into it, for
And
sure.
and here's the thing: is if you redefine marriage, right? I heard someone mention this. If you redefine marriage, you redefine parenting, and that's very key. That's We're going to get
Right.
into that shortly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Oh, that's great right there. Yeah.
that's yeah,
Uh-huh. Well, like think about
that's
it.
one of
It's
the
like,
key concepts of why marriage is important.
uh-huh.
But yeah, would you define marriage any differently before we go any deeper?
Um, I the how I would
What
I guess
what would
how I
you?
can define it, how I would like to define it is how it's the best and for a man and woman, the most like productive way to um you know uh use their relationship, their sexual powers for good, and that's going to create something, and that's going to build um, massive trust in each other.
Yeah, and honestly, that's key too. It gets a little difficult to talk about, but you said specifically a man and a woman, and that's what marriage was meant to be, right? So, um, that is not to state an opinion on the rights of other people, right? But the basic idea is you need a feminine and a masculine energy source in a relationship. That's typically through a man and woman, but it can be through homosexual relationships. That works that way too. But when it comes to marriage and the importance of marriage, it's actually very important that it be a bond between a man and a woman. And
Well,
part of that reason is because the purpose of your marriage is for children. Um, you know, one of the things that I jotted down as a note that I was incredibly important is marriage is one of the safest places for two partners to be. And of course, that could apply to any relationship. But what makes it so safe? Um, Assuming you're stepping into it with full integrity and planning on staying in that place, then your partner isn't going to walk out, right? That's the big problem with divorces. Uh, Jordan Peterson pointed this out. Divorce offers a backdoor. And so when you go into marriage with the mindset that divorce is an option, you leave the back door open. And that's no good. You've already ruined your marriage essentially if you
Mhm.
believe in
Right.
divorce.
You kind of ruined it from the beginning, though, when you have that, that when you have that in mind. It's distrust. I mean,
Right, yes.
if you can't fully say, I will what's it, till death do us part, it's like now
And
there's
mean it
hesitation, guys,
and
there's
intend it.
hesitation in the
Yep.
relationship, right? There is, I can't fully love you that way. And that's the awesome thing about it. You can fully let go and love, and with hesitation, there is no love.
Right.
So
Well, and when you fail to do that, you've taken something that was created for beauty, right? Because a lot of people say, well, why get married, right? Something that was created for beauty, and you now make it, you don't enable it to be the safest place for you and your partner to be, right? Um, like I said, marriage is the safest place for two partners to be, right? It's you guys are locked in. But if you don't have that trust, then you really can't have that love, and you really now it's not the safest place because that's one of the things you see a lot happening right now is everybody's afraid to get married. They'll be in a relationship. A lot of people are afraid of commitment. Sure, I understand that, but they're afraid to take it to the what most people saw as the ultimate level, which was marriage, because they're worried their partner could leave anytime, right? We have so many laws that say divorce is fine. We have so many people that say if your partner does this, then leave. Just find a new one. It doesn't matter. You can there's someone else. Whatever you have built with your partner doesn't matter. Move on. Which it's a whole other topic to talk about how to find a good partner, right? That's not the point. The point is if you're getting married to someone, you should be getting married to the right person. So if you're making that level of commitment, there shouldn't be any need to ever back out of it. And you should have properly made those calls to begin with. But once what you see right now is because of all these, the back doors left open and all the other things society tells you, you're sitting here going, well, I need to work because as far as I know, my partner could leave me for another person. As far as I know, my partner could leave me if I get sick. My partner could leave me if I get poor. And those were things that weren't supposed to be
what do you mean?
reality.
What do you mean?
Like
You need to work just in case.
I'm saying like what I'm getting at is one of the biggest fears is people don't think it's important to get married because their partner can leave them anyway, which defeats the purpose of marriage, right? People look at marriage and they say, well, my partner could leave me anyway, so why should I stop working and trust my partner to provide? Why should I even get married if my partner might get divorced from me? You
Hmm.
know, if anything bad happens, they'll leave. And the point of marriage is if anything bad happens, they won't leave. And if you will leave, then you really shouldn't be getting married. And you actually have a lot more work to do on
Right.
yourself and
You
probably
should
need to find a new partner.
start off with those standards of saying they have to make the statement that they're gonna be with me privately, publicly and lawfully. And so that's the point of marriage. It's
Well,
like,
and you have to make sure there's someone who will do that. You have to properly vet them, and you have to make sure you're someone who trusts them to do that. If you
right,
don't
but there's
trust them
also a
to do that, you're with
solution
the
to that.
wrong person,
There's a
or you
solution
need to
that
work
I
on
believe
yourself.
in, which is
What's that?
to always practice independence and to not depend on each other all the time. You know, like even if you're never gonna leave, you always want to be capable of taking care of yourself and not depending on your partner. And you don't have to spend every day, every hour with them. It's like you want some sort of independence in the relationship as well. But still, it's like, you probably have that fear because you're dependent in the relationship.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting you
And
said
that
that
fear
because
is because you don't trust them from the beginning. And that's the thing too.
I think that's interesting because there's a very very fine line, right? Because I think part of the reason people maintain so much independence it's a little different for men because men are in pursuit of freedom. Um, but I think people pursue that independence because, and this is kind of the point I was getting at a minute ago, is because they're afraid their partner will leave. They feel they need to be independent, so they're ready for when their partner leaves. And that's not a good mindset to have going into it, right? The relationship is, marriage is supposed to be your ultimate safest place to be, which is one of the reasons it's so important. And the independence thing is important too. I was actually just reading this. Daniel and I, we have a lot of respect for David Dita's work, and one of the things he was talking about was that was very eye opening to me. It was like, you to be able to understand your masculine and feminine side gives you independence. Then to be able to move beyond that to the next level and be with a partner and play only your masculine side or your feminine side, depending on which you are more of, is to actually truly be, right? So independence is encompassing your understanding and your practice of both sides, but then dependence, so to speak, or connection, I should say, union, is to be able to move beyond the independence of understanding your both sides and playing the side you really genuinely are, which is a little tough to understand if you're not familiar with that stuff, but it's basically a surrender to not being independent. It's basically moving beyond the comfort of being dependent so that you've become independent, you know how to be independent, but now you are surrendering and trusting and loving and moving into a place of letting the other person do certain things where you have to give up a little of your independence and not, you know how to be it, but you know how to give it away so that you can do even greater things with yourself and your partner.
Right. Right. And that sounds great. I think there's, in just relationships, like you don't need to be together all the time. I think it's important to separate, like not in a not by getting divorced, but like
Right. Oh yeah,
you have your individual things,
go out with your boys or your girls if you're a woman,
and be able to come back together and be able to handle yourself alone for a week.
Yeah.
Not feel like you need, and you're not able to trust of what they're doing.
Right.
So
And
I think those are both important right there.
I heard a married gentleman sharing how his wife and child were going away for the weekend or something on a vacation, and he couldn't go because he had stuff to take care of. And he was like, it's different. Usually I spend most of my time with my wife and my child. Usually I go on vacations with them. Usually, when I go to bed at night, my wife's in bed with me. So he was like, this is very different, so to be able to have that independence, in that case he wasn't seeking it, but to have that independence to that degree is different and good.
And then you get to miss each other.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. Come on, people.
Yeah, exactly.
We know this. But the other thing is you can't win playing defense. So you can't win if you're always trying to be independent from your partner. You really can't have the fullness of your marriage if you're not willing to surrender and trust and love and all these other things in your relationship. You have to play offensive, which means you have to let a little bit of your independence go. That's what marriage is. That's what partnership is.
Mm-hmm. And that's how you grow too. I mean,
right.
I just think we miss a lot of benefits from it. I mean, people have so much fear going into marriage. It's like, what's gonna hurt them, and people don't think what they're actually gaining from this relationship of where they commit to it and they can't leave, and they say what they mean.
And sadly enough, that's what's really pushed is people like, you can't be in a relationship unless you're independent. And it's like, that is a much different meaning than most people understand. That the way they take it is not the way it's meant, and the way it's pushed is really not the point that's supposed to be pushed and understood. You can surrender, you can trust, you can you can participate in a state where you're not acting independent. You don't have to be the macho tough person, or the what's the one, um, the bad bitch or whatever. Like you can share the connection, the opportunity, right? But that was the first point I want to make. Why marriage is important. It's the safest place to be, as a couple, is within the bounds of marriage,
Yeah,
right? It's
it's the
created
most
for a
productive
reason,
way to invest your, sexual power.
right?
One
It's a,
thing, and
it's
to
a
not
safe way to invest
spread yourself
yourself.
thin.
It's a safe way to invest yourself. You know, it's there to make sure that you both aren't going to walk out if something bad happens. You know, you're going to help see the other person through it, and they're going to do the same when that happens for you.
And you still make them, even though you trust them, you still make them go through the process of, committing to you and having those standards, right? We know that, eh,
But you do that
we
before. You
know
don't
that it's
decide
gonna,
that later.
we know that the relationship's gonna be hard. We know that people are, anybody is, not perfect, and so
Well, actually, that brings up a good point.
that's why you need to.
I would actually say marriage and relationships. A lot of people say relationships are hard. I would actually say relationships are easy. They should be easy. And you might come to this point during your relationship rather than get to it before. It kind of comes to the understanding yourself and becoming independent before you enter a union of any sort. But I would argue relationships are easy because if you understand yourself as a person and you're in your true, like, core being, then things will be easy. Like if you're a man and you're a masculine man and you take the masculine role properly, right? You do your job as a masculine man, for example, and she does her job as a feminine woman, for example, then the relationship will be easy because as a man, you're going to understand when things get hard that it's a test or it's this or that, and you're going to know how to handle it. And you know, they say everything is the man's fault, um, which doesn't excuse women from taking responsibility for their own actions. But but the point is, if as a man you know how to properly act as a man, as a masculine man, then anytime something else happens out of line, whether it's with your partner or not, you're going to control it in a good way. And anytime things happen properly, then you'll also appreciate that moment for what it is. And so things will flow. And when things don't flow, you'll understand that sometimes things don't flow. So it doesn't necessarily become something difficult. You just see it as things not flowing properly. And this is your opportunity to act how you need to act necessarily.
Right. Well, most people aren't aligned with the core. It's
Well, and there
really
you
hard
go. There's
because
the problem. That's
there's
true.
work. That's it.
Yeah.
I
There is work.
go into
But
that
there's always
mindset in the
work.
relationship because there needs to be work. It's like we you know it you go
Let me
it
make this
it
clear.
seems easy in the beginning. Like it's easy in the beginning because you're inflated with this, emotional um
Right. You're caught up in the
connection and stuff like that. But like you can make the relationship better and flourish. But it's
well,
like it takes some nurturing to do that.
here's
Intentional nurturing to
here's what
do
I'm
that.
getting at, right? Because relationships do take work. Life takes work, right? But relationships are easy. Your life is hard. So if you handle your life properly on a personal level, even if that means, obtaining the help from someone else, surrendering or trusting your partner, whatever, then your relationship becomes easy, right? Basically, if you handle the difficulty that you experience on a personal level, even if it's with the help of someone else, then the relationship's actually easy. Does that make a little more sense? Right? Basically, I'm separating the relationship and the self. If you can handle the self, the relationship's easy. If you can handle the challenges that are thrown at you, whether it's from your partner in the relationship or from something else, the relationship actually becomes easy because
Right,
you
because
know how to
you view
master
the world
yourself.
from yourself. You
Yes.
view the world from your own perspectives. So in the end, it doesn't really, I guess, matter as much of what your partner is doing, but how you view it and how you perceive it and what you do
Yes. Yes.
in
Yes. That's what I'm
reaction
getting
to
at.
it. It's all
It
about
doesn't
you.
matter what happens in your relationship. If
That's
you
what
know
you
how
are
to handle it as a
for
personal
yourself.
problem, then the relationship is easy. Um, that I'm glad you mentioned that because that was a point I might have missed if you hadn't. Um, but one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this was, you know, as people, what do we owe children, right? Um,
It's true. Yes. Good question.
Marriage gives children something else that nothing else gives them. That's what I heard someone say, and I said, that's why marriage is important, right there. That's a point I think that gets missed, right? Marriage gives children something that nothing else gives them. It gives them two parents who are in it for the long haul, no matter what, who trust each other and love each other, who are independent but know how to take their independence and connect it in a union of surrender and trust and giving and love and all these other beautiful human attributes. Um, and it gives them all these other things, role models, the initial education. I mean, they say nobody teaches you better than your family, than your parents, right? Like sort of.
Well, nobody has more influence on you than them.
Yes,
So
that much better.
there's an important role to play, and then they probably care about you the most too because they're raising you, they're feeding you,
Yeah.
giving you a place to sleep.
Most of the things you see in life are first seen in family scenarios, you know. A lot of
They're
times you don't leave
images
your
of
home
you.
until you're ready to leave your home. So
Right.
uh,
Yeah. No, I
your,
think that's
your
great.
parents are the
And like,
ones who slowly integrate you into things, how to walk, how to socialize, stuff
mhm.
like that.
They got skin in the game here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true too.
This,
They got
this,
literally.
you are a part of them as a kid. And oh, what was I gonna say? Uh oh yeah. It's like you might, you might think, well, we shouldn't commit to this marriage because we have a bad marriage or something like that. But always remember that actions speak louder than words. Like actions are stronger than words and have more influence. Like
Right, you can act
you
differently.
you don't need to you should show them should show being an example to your kids that you love each other and you care about each other and you trust each other, but just not, you know just not going against your word and what you said when you said I will, be with you till death do us part,
Right, because
is in
then
itself showing that you trust each other and it trust yourself, um, and have integrity. So there we go. Even if,
well,
I mean,
and
there's many marriages that are going to be a struggle, and man and woman won't be perfect examples of love and trust for their kids, but they can at least still show that through sticking it out if they're
right.
having a tough time.
I don't know if I totally agree with that. That's really where the that's really where the you shouldn't be having a child with someone you wouldn't marry comes in. And that's also where you shouldn't be marrying someone you wouldn't want to have a child with comes in. Or you shouldn't marry someone who you know isn't a good long-term investment, whether you want to have a child with them or not. Because sometimes you want to have a child with someone who's not a good marriage partner. Um,
Well, things people change too. Like, you're not the same person 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Like,
I think that's a common excuse, to be honest, when it comes to marriage. They change, so we're getting a divorce.
mhm.
I think that's a common one. I do think people change. I do think people can change. I don't think people change like that.
I'm
Uh,
talking about if I'm talking about your partner. If your partner's changing, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it
right.
in the
Well,
end.
that's what I'm saying is I think those in most cases are scenarios you can see out from. Like if your partner becomes a raging alcoholic, I think you could pick up on that if you spend enough time, before marriage, understanding who your partner is, you're most likely going to see any signs that that's going to be a problem in the future. Do they
Right.
have
Well,
selfish?
okay. I agree with
Do they
you.
have?
No, I think that's important, and you need to vet properly before you go into a relationship like this, a committed relationship. But I'm saying, if you're already there, right, you made the mistake, which happens. You
I'm
still
getting that. Don't
important.
make the mistake, because
Yeah.
if you do make the mistake, then a lot of the stuff we're saying doesn't apply because you made the mistake. You're not actually in a good marriage, and you're probably not in a you probably weren't, which is okay. It's really hard to be there, but you probably weren't owning your core, and you didn't choose someone who's owning their true core or essence. Um, and so that's another big key point, which we kind of touched on, but like you need to be able to choose someone who either is working on, which I think most people kind of do an okay job at, or who already owns who they are as a person, which can be tough. That's really tough. But like, if you're not there yet, then you shouldn't be getting married. You shouldn't be in a relationship. Actually, is more important to state.
Right.
Uh,
Well, it's important
that's
to learn,
the bigger
how to
thing. Is
connect with that stuff
yes, yeah.
first.
Um,
However, you're talking about before you're getting married. I'm talking about, let's say you're already married. You made that commitment. You already did, and that's all I'm saying.
yeah, yeah.
It's like
That's tough. That might be a
then just
conversation for another day.
focus on yourself. Yeah.
I got a lot of opinions about that. We'll drag this out all day. Um, but yeah, what do you owe children? What's the purpose of marriage, right? I mean, that's why marriage was strictly heterosexual for the longest time, right? Because, and this is defined by most Christian religions, which, yeah, I mean, there's a reason this is defined by most Christian traditions, which is, I mean, why was the world predominantly Christian? Like, for a good reason there too. Like, but the reason it's between a man and a woman is because sex in a marriage should be unitive and procreative, right? You're getting married to have children, right? The whole narrative of you can get married and not have children is honestly a selfish narrative. Unless you can have children, um, then your purpose should be to bring more beautiful life into the world. Why wouldn't you not want that, right? And so, um, sure, you might feel a little judged, and you might feel as if I'm telling you how to live your life, but you're here to give. You're not here to see how much money you can make with your partner, and have so much money you don't know what to do with it. And like a lot of people in the Western world you see now, well, we're married. We're gonna have our money. We're either gonna pool it or keep our bank accounts separate, and we're not gonna have kids. We'd rather travel. Like that's becoming about you. That's becoming about what you want, right? And that's not really the point of marriage. Getting married isn't about you. It's about the other person, and it's about bringing in new generations of yourself to further better the world after you leave. It's about bringing more beauty into the world.
Hmm. Right.
So then, what do you
In the end,
what do you owe the children? Well, huh?
if you make that comparison, it's like, in the end, a parent would not trade their child for billions of dollars. Just shows you the value right there.
What do you mean?
I'm saying, if you choose that lifestyle, basically, if you get married and you're like, oh, we're gonna pool our money, we're just gonna work hard and go on vacations and stuff like that. It's like, you think of the value. What's more valuable, right? Making money, going on vacations, or another life,
Right.
another
I mean,
copy of you.
that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is I don't think that's okay. That's not really the point of marriage. The point of marriage is to have one of the best possible, safest places for a relationship to be, because you apparently want to be in a relationship, which is a good thing. Um, and then to take that beauty and to create more beauty with it, rather than just traveling the world, which, you know, nobody could do that until 100 years ago anyway. So is it really that important? It's good, travel the world, but there's bigger priorities.
Right. Well, in life in general, you want to be creating and producing in some way, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Very true.
Because that's how you give, essentially.
But then that's what you've seen recently. The whole redefining parenting, right? As a result of redefining marriages, it has been redefined, and the result is so has parenting now, right? Now children aren't important. You don't need children in a marriage. Now the school can raise your children if you have children, or the state, I should say, the government, whatever, the country. And the result is a degradation in morals, a degradation in moral code. All you have to do is look around.
Right. And when that's done, you basically shoot yourself in the foot. You deprive yourself of good things.
Yeah.
That will make your life more fulfilling.
So one of the other things that I'd heard was it's crazy to have a society where people believe their children don't need their parents, which is what you see right now. We're being convinced that children don't need their parents, that a single mother can raise a child fine, and the father should be totally excluded because he doesn't make enough money, or he's not perfectly competent, or whatever argument the opposite the other spouse in that situation puts up. And a lot of times the court system goes with that. I would say it's even crazier to think that a society doesn't need children at all, right? Which is the other thing that's being pushed very subtly, is that we have population control. We have too many people. Marriage isn't about having children. You don't need children in a marriage. Relationships aren't about having children. I mean, and it's interesting. I encourage you to go back and look at some of the episodes we've done, like with Fernando or Matt, on people who are gay. But initially relationships were between men and women, and that's because relationships between men and women produce more men and women for society, and society needs more men and women to replace the old men and women, right? That's just a reality. It sounds harsh, but it's not to show any less love for people who have grown older or moved on or passed on or whatever. But this is, you have to acknowledge those things while also acknowledging you still have to replace people, whether it's a pleasant thought or not. And there's no better place to replace people than in a beautiful union between two people who can physically, naturally, biologically have children normally, like the last, since the beginning of the human race. And so, yeah, there's a lot of beautiful advancements in medicine, which we are very lucky to have. But everything has a balance. You don't want to take your own success and advancements in something like the medical industry and push it to a whole new level that's not necessary. But to think society can operate without children, and to think that children in society can operate without their biological parents is a ridiculous idea. If you really rationally think about it, logically think about it, it's absolutely absurd. And you can see the harms. The research is there. If you don't see the research, you're not looking for the research. It's there. But that's arguably the most important reason for marriage. Why marriage is important, right? It's a connection. It's a promise between two people that you can't back out of, and the perfect place to create safety for the ultimate safety for you and another person, your partner. Excuse me. And as a result of that, being able to fulfill the even deeper purpose of marriage and of union in general, relationships in general, which is to bring more children into the world.
Right.
There's my conclusion.
Perfect.
My hypothesis.
I just want to finish with this because
I
think it's funny because you said it's I guess it does make sense to have someone else raise your kids and not you yourself, or not the parents that are in a union. It's
Yeah.
because it's pretty simple. It's like, who's got more skin in the game here? It's the parents, right? Your teachers are getting paid to teach you, right? Your country, the government's going to use you, right? They don't really care, but who cares about you the most? Your parents. So, and when they're in a committed relationship, it's like now they have integrity, and you learn that from them. So,
Well, and so much more from it. Now you have trust, and with trust can come love and surrender and all these other things because you know they're not going to leave, right? Now you can step out of your independence and become, a union, a true union. You're still capable of independence, but you can let go of it and you can surrender into leadership or followership. The sub and the dom, as a lot of people talk about it. But that's why
all
marriage
right,
is important. We have like 30
we gotta
seconds
wrap
left.
up.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks for joining us.
thanks for watching. Peace.
Peace.